Anything special?
Yeah. This is the Beyond the Dojo podcast. It's always special. I'm Lauren.
You're special. I'm Jeremiah.
Let's talk about our boo-boos in yesterday's class.
Oh my god. Let's talk about the lack of control someone has.
Oh, whatever. Yesterday we did a drill that one of the guys that trains with us, Terry, used to train with Takashina, and he said they used to do this drill where they did in place Gyakuzuki and then same arm step in Oizuki. Okay, so we did it like practicing against pads, and then we did it against each other, and once we started incorporating any kind of blocking, that is like a very difficult drill, by the way. If you are not doing it, you should be doing it. But what happened first is I was partnered up with Terry. And at some point, I was trying to block, and the timing gets so screwed up because you're trying to block the reverse punch, and then they're stepping in and punching. He nailed me in the forearm. I have this nice purple bruise. You can't see because my arms are always purple, but I have a big purple bruise on my arm. And then you did the same thing that I did. Jeremiah tried to block me, and I punched him in the wrist. And he's hurt.
Yeah, dude, it was weird. It hit me right there on the bone. Like, right there with that little bony protrusion on the ulnar side, the pinky side. And all last night, my whole outside hand was, like, tingling and numb.
Oh, my God.
And today, I can't put any, like... I can put pressure on it, but after a certain point, it kind of screams again. So.
I felt my first two knuckles, like, wrap around your bone when I hit you, and I was like, oh, boy, that was a weird spot to hit somebody.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Man. And then Ken busted his knuckles open and was just bleeding everywhere, all over his gi, all over everybody else's gi, all over the floor. I think Mick is the only person that didn't get hurt.
Yeah, we're a bunch of softies.
Terry didn't get hurt.
You know?
Yeah.
We just, yeah. We didn't get, you know.
I got punched on the arm.
Yeah. Good drill. Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, someone's got to learn control.
It was not a control thing. Your arm was in my way. Okay? I was trying to punch. You were trying to block. Your timing was off. See, that's the whole thing, is it's a timing drill for the blocker person because you're going to get nailed if your arms are in the wrong spot. Also, how hard is it? Seriously, like you're blocking a reverse punch, they're snatching it back, and then they're stepping in and nailing you again, and you're trying to get the heck out of the way.
I didn't really have that much trouble. I mean, I was consistently blocking with the same hand and punching you in counters with the same hand. So literally was doing three things.
So just the one
time
you messed up by punching you in the wrist.
The one time my timing was off. Yeah. It was my fault.
Of course it was your fault. The one time my timing was off, I got a giant bruise on my arm. But that's none of my business.
Right. Now that we put everybody else on blast, let's go on to the normal vlog. I called it a vlog.
It's a podcast. I can never remember what this is called. It calls it a vlogcast.
A vlogcast.
Vlogcast. What the hell ever it is.
Listen, that's just...
for 2 years
those
now,
words just show my age.
We've been doing this for 2 years now. We're 2 years
Just 2 years?
Yeah, 2 years.
Oh my god! How many have you done?
It might be a little bit less than that.
What podcast number is this?
This is 48. We're on episode 48.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't think we'd have that much to talk about, to be honest with you.
Well, there's always new things to
hash out.
I was going to use some foul language, but there's always things to rant about. So, welcome to our ranty podcast.
Yeah. Well.
So anyhow, we haven't actually, as of this recording, we haven't released our previous episode, so we're not sure how people are going to respond to it. The previous episode was training with bands and tubes and elastic type stuff.
Now I really feel official because we haven't released our previous...
We haven't released it
That
yet.
Is so...
It hasn't been released to the public.
Why do I feel like a YouTuber now? Like official YouTuber.
It hasn't been... It's literally scheduled to be published. It hasn't been published yet.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be talking about weighted vest training. So I'm actually still having some trouble finding research on training with ankle and wrist weights.
Well, I can understand though, because...
It must not be very common.
It's not. I don't think it is very common.
Or outside of martial arts for that. So, but what is pretty common is using a weighted vest. So obviously, like, you know, I used to work at a gym, so people would go and buy weighted vests for running or for running and walking and running. Basically, they'd bring them into the gym and they'd be wearing weighted vests, like sweating all over the vest. And there was one in the gym, which was pretty gross. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to use a community vest, dude. That's like sharing a shirt, and I'm not going to share a gym shirt. You know what I mean? That is so disgusting.
Our gym was so cheap that people would get so pissed off because there wasn't certain equipment in the gym. So they would buy equipment and bring it with them and either leave it there or leave it there on accident. And so now it was the gym equipment. So we would have like wrist straps and like gloves and different attachments for the cables. I mean, this isn't Anytime Fitness, okay? This is a franchise gym. These people have money to buy stuff, and they wouldn't buy things. And all of the meatheads are like, "Why don't we have a good barbell? That barbell's bent." So I think somebody brought in a barbell. Like that's how we are in our community. They don't like it. They're gonna bring in their own stuff. Let everybody else use it. All the 1,300 members in that gym.
Side note: if your customers are bringing in shit you should have,
maybe you should get it.
Maybe you should be doing
or you should
your job.
Or you should have a discussion with them as to why it's not allowed. Or
right.
Whatever.
Good Lord. I hope we don't do that at our dojo.
That was just a side note.
I
don't think we have had people bring in stuff to us.
Yeah, we've had people bring in stuff, but it was more like, hey, I have this. I'm not going to use it. You know, here's a bob.
Take this crap from me.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
I had
you know.
people give me weights and stuff too.
Yeah.
See, my thing was I didn't have 15s. I did not have a set of 15-pound dumbbells for years, and it annoys the crap out of my clients. But I'm too cheap to go and pay a bunch of money for dumbbells. It's different here. I'm not a franchise.
Listen. So you fit in well with that franchise.
Whatever. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
They can just
how long did you work there?
They can jump from 12s to 20s. Okay.
How long did you work there?
2.5 years.
Rubbed off on you, huh?
No, I've been working on my own longer than that.
Yeah, but the cheapness ain't wore off yet.
Listen, they're
just
fine.
saying,
they
dude.
can just make the jump from 12 to 20. Somebody gave me some 15s, so
yeah.
It's fine. Okay, so anyway, moving on to weighted vests. So I'm gonna really quickly go over these because I spent an hour reading through 40 pages of research last night, only for it to tell me nothing. So I'll briefly, and then Jeremiah read through this morning. He was like, "That didn't say anything." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." So I'm gonna read these. I'm gonna go through these really quick, and then we'll kind of discuss personal experience with these. So the first study is Lowe's centralization does not affect the kinetic and kinematic output of counter movement jumps, and that is by Tredrea et al. Basically what this one talked about is they had people, they talk about how a lot of times in research, one of the markers of power output, or if they're using force plates, or if they're looking for jump height or strength or whatever, they'll often use a counter movement jump.
So what is exactly the counter movement jump for us laymen?
Counter movement jumps literally where you start from a standing position, you drop down into a squat and you jump.
Okay.
So you literally go counter to the jump, and then it's like a normal jump. I don't know why they have to call it a counter movement, but nobody would jump from just stiff leg. So what will often happen in research is you'll have to use a Smith machine in order to do a counter movement jump. Smith machine is where you have a barbell that's actually connected to two poles.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not a freestanding barbell. I have never seen a piece of research where they've just used a regular barbell, but according to this paper, that does happen sometimes, and they talked about the dangers of using a barbell, just because you're having to work against the lateral load and all this kind of stuff. You're trying to get through the jump and whatever. So what they did is they had two different groups, and they had one group do barbell, their counter movement jumps with a barbell, and one group did it with a weighted vest, but in order to equate for hand position, they actually gave them a wooden dowel. So everybody's hands were like this, but one group was using the weighted vest and the other one was using the barbell. And the main thing was, let's see, it says load position serves only to decrease the duration of the propulsive phase when heavy barbell. Let's see. So basically it's saying that, let's see. It's saying that I think the initial start of the jump is a little bit quicker when you're using a vest, because with a barbell you're a little bit wobbly. So what the primary thing with this was that would actually apply to karate is essentially they're saying that the position of the weight that you're using, it does matter. I mean, we're not walking around with external apparatuses all over us all the time. We obviously talked about using bands last week, but it's just saying that having the weight centralized like that is actually pretty good, because it does add some extra resistance, but you're able to get the benefit of using more load than what your body has to offer, basically. And it's saying it's pretty much safer. Let's see. And it's saying that it's also helpful in producing peak power, and that's in a vertical position. Okay, so that was the first study. Like I said, kind of straightforward. The second one was, new tool to control and monitor weighted vest training load for sprinting and jumping in soccer. So a lot of these were actually done on soccer players.
I think all of them were done on soccer players.
Almost all of them, there was no martial arts stuff. I didn't find anything like that. I got to keep looking though, because there was actually a ton of weighted vest studies, and I couldn't get through all of them. Literally, long story short, what these guys did is they just created an equation that showed how much weight you should be using for different types of movements. So they said, sprinting and jumping. So they basically created an equation to determine how much weight you should be using for sprinting, how much weight you should be using for jumping. And they said that there was a difference. I believe the sprinting weight was higher. Let me just double check that real quick. I think they were saying, and there was another study that pointed this out as well, that usually around 13% of body mass, 13% of body weight is essentially what you would want to be loaded with. So if I weigh 100 pounds, a max of about 13 pounds would be good. And I do weigh about 100 pounds. So they're saying that you really don't want to go too heavy in order to optimize your power output. Now that could change per person. I mean, the more you train with a weighted vest, and the more you would be able to continue to keep your speed high or your power output high while, using that resistance. But you got to remember that added weight is going to slow you down in your athletic movement. You have certain, paths you're supposed to be taking, so you do have to be careful with the weight. I would suggest, like we talked about with the band, starting really, really low on weight for the weighted vest, and then getting up to that 13% rather than just jumping straight into it.
What was that vest that you had? How many pounds is that? 4?
Mine's 4 pounds.
4 pounds.
So I have a 4-pound weight vest that I got from Walmart, and it's actually really awesome because it's not big. It's not like cover the size. It's just like it looks like a
vest.
No, it looks like a that you hold guns in.
Bra?
No, not a bra. I don't know what that thing's called.
Gun strap? Holster?
Anyway, like the back one. Anyway, but it doesn't fit quite like that. It goes kind of across the chest and down, but it leaves lots of space for you to be able to move. And the other thing that a lot of these guys pointed out is that because you can keep the weight vest so tight, you can stop it from sloshing around all over the place. So.
Right, that's important.
The next study was called Effects of Vest Loading on Sprint Kinetics and Kinematics. Let's see. Let me go just straight to the results here. This is the one where, let's see here. Sorry. This is, I was doing this really late, so I forgot what this one's about. Let's see.
I was laughing because all those papers just fell off my leg.
Yes. Sorry, guys. It's quiet during a podcast here. Let's see. I'm just reading what I highlighted real quick.
Dead air.
Basically, it's basically just saying that that it can affect how a person is moving. I see. This is the one where they talked about different speeds. So it's saying, so this section says, a decrease in forward trunk lean with vest sprinting likely illustrates a reduction in the subject's ability to control the added mass to their frame. And it says that, like at the beginning of a sprint, a lot of the force vector is horizontal because you're getting started. And then once you get going, it's a little bit more vertical, supposedly. It says, it is likely that vest loading affected the subject's ability to produce force in a horizontal direction through a limitation in their ability to control the added mass and resultant forces. So basically, if you can't control your torso, then it's probably not good to start adding weight. Right. So when people talk about like core control and controlling your center and all of this kind of stuff and your weight sloshing around all over the place like your actual torso, they actually saw some issues with that in this study. So I would we talked about last time, having good mechanics. This is another one of those, like having good structural alignment and being able to control what your torso is doing without a weight vest before adding on a weight vest, especially since a lot of our movement is horizontal.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next two were probably the ones that mattered the most. This one is effects of combined strength and resisted sprint training on physical performance in U19 athlete soccer players. So they pointed out, that soccer players, stronger and more powerful soccer players and players of different sports, not necessarily just soccer, are usually able to accelerate faster, jump higher, change direction quickly, and that's why they're arguing that using a weight vest will actually lead to increases in strength and power. They're saying that they think that there will be a big improvement in soccer players' ability to move whenever they do this. So they wanted to see what the effect was of one group just doing regular soccer training, and another group added in weight vest and weighted sled pulling type stuff. I don't think they separated the sled pulling and the weighted vest. I think that group did both of those, and the other group just did just a soccer thing. Remember that one?
No, I think this is the one where they split the sled and the vest.
They split those two?
Yeah, and then the other one is where they did the control group. And
yeah, well, they always do a control group. They had one control group. Let's see. Weighted vest and or sled. Okay. So they had part of the working group do the sled, part of them did the weighted vest.
Right.
And let's go all the way past all these numbers. Got that one. They were also pointing out that another benefit of using like a weighted vest or using some kind of resistance training is increased neural activation. So a lot of your benefits, and we've talked about this before, a lot of your benefits from resistance training, from any kind of resistance training or even karate training, is basically you are teaching your neuromuscular system how to work more efficiently. So you're literally teaching your brain how to send signals to certain muscles to fire at the proper time, like intramuscular coordination type stuff too. And whenever you add resistance, that actually increases the ability for your body to train that because you're using more motor units. So because there's added resistance, because there's added, I don't know how else to that than resistance, because there's more load to be moved, more muscles have to be used, more parts of your muscles have to be used, so your brain has to send more signals to those muscle fibers to actually fire. This is another one that pointed out that optimal weight vest load is about 12.6% of body mass, so about 13%. So this is really interesting, and this was repeated in the next study, and I just want to read this because I don't really know what to think of it. It says, oh, by the way, they did see improvements in the people who did the weighted vest extra training and the sled training versus just doing soccer training. So it says, it has been proposed that weighted sled and weighted vest training increase the eccentric strength of the leg extensor muscles during the braking phase of ground contact, which leads to an increase in the muscle and leg spring stiffness, potentially decreasing ground contact time and thus increasing stride rate. So I think if I understand this correctly, they're basically saying that because you're using a weighted vest, it's adding, because you're having to stiffen more whenever you touch the ground and whenever you're running, it's actually stiffening up those muscles and those tendons. And if you know anything about kinesiology, the stiffer a tendon is, then the more springy it is. This is the reason that basketball players, the dog is stomping at us because she needs to go potty. If you know anything about basketball players, they really shouldn't have like super stretchy hamstrings because they need that extra spring in order to be able to jump really high. So in some cases, for some athletes, it's detrimental to be really flexible in certain joints. And then this is one of those where they're saying like, yeah, you might be able to see that in the lower leg, they're actually increasing the amount of stiffness in that part. So you might see an increase in stride length and you might see an increase in speed because of that. Let's see here. Yep, so it says the present findings demonstrated that sprint training with overload control used both weighted vests and pulled sled is significantly greater when compared to that of regular soccer training. So that was an argument for using it. So the last study was on straight up like on velocity. It says effects of sprint training with and without weighted vest on speed and repeated sprint ability in male soccer players. And this was Ray et al. So they had some soccer players, and he's just yelling at the dog. They tested vertical jump, 10 and 30 meter sprint tests, and then repeated sprint ability. So the ability to be able to, go sprint over and over again. I think that's usually called capacity. And then they did, they tested with they basically had a weighted vest group and an unresisted sprint group. And they said that both types of training actually does seem to increase sprint performance. And it says, and they repeated the same thing, that they feel like using the weighted vest is going to help increase the what was the exact term they used? Eccentric strength of the extensor muscles in the braking phase of a movement. So, like toward the not necessarily toward the end of the run, but they might be referring to the end of each stride, where it's going to actually increase the stiffness of those muscles. So you might be able to see an increase in speed there. The last part that I thought was really interesting. Can you hear me, Jeremiah? Because this part's important. So they said that the distance traveled actually mattered a little bit. So they said, this is what it actually says. The training modalities impact velocity slightly differently as a result of their effect on the rate of change of velocity. So 30 meters versus 10 meters. So basically, it has more it says this fact has important practical implications, as 10-meter sprints are more likely to occur than 30-meter sprints on soccer players, and thus unresisted training may provide more specific adaptation. So that's why they're saying, like, running 30 meters, you'll probably see more of a positive effect using a weighted vest, because you're working on increasing your acceleration, so you have a longer period of time that you're running. That might actually have a better effect than going 10 meters, which is really interesting because, like, in a sport, generally running short bursts of 10 meters is pretty common. It's not as common as running 30 meters. And then for karateka, we're going even less than that. We're not even going 10 meters. We're going like 2 meters. So I'm curious what that looks like, if it's going to matter as far as increased speed. Now, I feel that we don't really use weighted vests necessarily for speed. So all of that said, I'm going to put these aside. Let's talk about why people normally use weighted vests.
Let's talk about our prima Madonna dog who wants to go outside and stomp her feet and then look at me like I'm crazy.
This is how she communicates with us. She just stomps at us. Like, why don't you understand me?
And we take her out, and then we take her out. She's like, what? What are we doing out here?
Why did you take me outside?
I don't need to be outside.
I just wanted you to look at me. She hates when we do work, basically. God. All right, go ahead.
All right, so
why do you use weighted vests?
Yeah. A couple things I want to talk about weighted vest first was the fact that the fitment has to be right. Don't get a vest that's so large that you can't tie it tightly to your body. Mm-hmm. The moving it around is not good. Not because it'll hit something. It's because when you start to move, let's say you do, I primarily did weighted vest training with kata. Okay. So I put the vest on and I would do basically my katas, right? When you start to do the rotations and the subtle shifts, that extra little lump, like shake or the weight shifting, is really difficult after a while of training it to maintain the structure.
Yeah.
I believe we use the vest. The most benefit for us is, besides the strength building aspects, is the stability. Mm-hmm. Being able to maintain your posture, be able to maintain proper stance with this extra weight. Because when you take it off, almost immediately you can feel there's like your movement's improved because of it. Mm-hmm. That's to me the main focus when I use it. Right. The other thing I would I'm concerned with when using a vest is don't get one that's too big. So let's say you got a 20-pounder, but it sits off your body really wide. And there's some that are out that way. All of a sudden now your arm is, even though it's tight against the vest, it's floating. Right. And I had that issue for a long time when I was working with the vest, is that when I went back to karate, my arm would be slightly out. Because that's the position I was used to punching. Right. And I had to retrain myself to keep it tighter and all that. Right. Things like that you really won't notice until someone points them out. Right. Or you'll catch it once in a while, but you won't feel it. You won't feel that subtle change. So form, it benefits form, but it can be detrimental to form also. Right, depending on the shape of the vest and all that kind of stuff. Right. There are vests out there that are made of like compression shirts, where you'll slide on just like a normal compression shirt, where they have pockets for gel packs. Yeah. And those are pretty nice, but they're expensive. They're like $200. Yeah. The ones at Walmart and stuff like that, they do okay.
Just having a day. Okay.
Dude.
The Walmart ones are, well, sometimes they have them where they're like really high. They're like
where they're like they're the chest ones.
It's like a crop top.
Yeah, it's not that great because for guys, especially if you have a broader chest, it's not going to fit very well, and you don't want the space under your armpit. You would rather have it lower so you can squeeze your armpit better. So, I would encourage you not to do that. used a 20-pounder for almost 2.5 years. A 20-pound vest to the point where it was tearing apart on me. Like, it was starting to fall apart. And it was probably the best weight that I could use. Because when I jumped up to the 40-pounder, way too much. Yeah. Way too much weight. Way too much... I wasn't strong enough, and I felt it in my lower back all the time. Yeah. And that's the dangerous thing is, like, if you don't trust your body to, like, give you these warning signs, like, hey, that's too much, you will hurt yourself. It will definitely knock you back a couple steps.
Yeah. One of the things that Steve Wool has pointed out to people is that whenever you use these kind of apparatuses and you're moving with, even not with a lot of speed, even if you're moving slowly, which you probably should.
Right. Well, that's what he encourages, a slow train.
You're stressing your connective tissue, and you're stressing a lot of the stabilizer muscles in the body. So whenever you have that weighted vest on, even though it's really close to you, and it is a little bit more stable because it's so close, when you start turning and you're doing hip rotation in stances, or you're moving between stances,
the torque is
all
crazy.
Of a sudden, as you move, you're already getting into that whole... oh gosh, I'm blanking on words right now. Proprioception. So your body is essentially trying to configure where it is in space, and it's trying to remain stable, and you're trying to, create a linear path or a curved path or whatever. Now you've added on this extra resistance, and you're having to stabilize even more because that weight you're not used to, and it's kind of pulling you around. Yep. I usually feel it like in my lower abs and like in my groin and in my hips and stuff because I'm trying my lower back a little bit, but usually there because I'm trying to not, twist my top off like a...
I got lower back issues, so anytime anything's stressed or overworked, my lower back's going to scream because that's one of your main areas to stabilize your posture and your torso. Right. So I will always feel it there first before I feel it anywhere else, and that's my little warning light that I know for myself to be like, hey, that's too much. Yeah. But sometimes I'm too timid. I don't want to get past that. Right. The other thing is we did the 13%, so I figured out my 13% is like 30 pounds.
Okay. So 20 is not that bad.
20 wasn't that bad. It was under that 13%. I could have went 10 pounds more and really got more out of it, but you know what?
But that is in a specific, that's for jumping and running.
So I think for 20 pounds, man, I wore that vest out and I'm pretty happy with it. I actually have a 10-pound vest also. The 10-pound vest isn't as bad as the 20. Like the 20-pound vest, let's say you do 10 kata. You do hand go down, up and down, right? Down, up 5 and then 5 back. Dude, you're worn. You're tired. You're breathing hard. You're worn out. With the 10-pounder, for me, it was a good workout, but like I wasn't done. Right. It also helps with like solidifying the non-moving parts of the technique. So like in front kicks, I love doing it with a weighted vest because...
Oh God, you probably feel yourself swinging back.
No, that was the one thing. Is like it really forced you to stay upright. Yeah. But it also made you focus on the thing that wasn't moving. So the supporting leg out of front stance, right? That made the kicking leg for me so much more relaxed and so much easier to just throw in and come back and not have like this tension in it to kind of hurt myself. I realized how to kick more relaxed because of that. And I think that's maybe the second benefit besides the stabilizer muscles being stronger and you feeling that better like control of your torso and your posture is that you're now able to free up the muscles that don't have to work as much. Right. And it starts to show you the benefits of it. Right. Like with bands or with weighted, wrist weights or ankle weights, you're still tensioning through that movement and that's part of the purpose for that, but it's part of the bad side or the bad effect of it too, because then now you're naturally tensioning up something that shouldn't be, or at least at the wrong time. So I like a vest. Do
you feel like? See, this is always my concern. Do you feel like wearing it, like you get extra tension in your shoulders at all because it's laying on your shoulders?
If you have tension in your shoulders, you're going too heavy. Okay. Or the vest is like too loose. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's one or the other. But for me, the one I bought from Walmart was too loose. So I literally got some of Velcro, like that long strip of Velcro, and wrapped it around my gut and tightened it down to where it wouldn't shift as much. But, I mean, it still shifts. I mean, it's part of it. Yeah. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, I like, like I said, I like training with it. You just got to be really careful. Right. And you can't, I thought you could do it regularly. And you can, but you have to be like aware of how much tolerance you built up.
Right.
Like you got to be hyper aware that if you cross that line, for days afterwards, you're feeling it.
Yeah,
you're feeling it hard.
Remember that when you add resistance or you're increasing, it's called like your volume load, basically. Whenever you are doing a certain type of movement, whether you're doing just karate stuff or if you're doing strength training, once you start adding on the load or you're adding on the repetitions, the overall amount of work that your body is doing, you're accumulating, more and more every repetition that you do. And then your body has to recover from that. If it's used to a certain baseline and then all of a sudden you increase this stimulus, you have to recover from that. So keep that in mind, because some people will implement a new training thing and they'll feel great while they're doing it and they'll overdo it, and then maybe they'll do it again, or they do too much right out of the gate in their very first training session, and then they get sore or they get injured and they're just like, oh my gosh, there's no way, nobody should be using that because it's awful, because it hurt me.
Right.
Well, no, you just did too much too soon, either too much weight or maybe it was just too many repetitions even with a light weight that you just weren't used to. Your body has to get used to this kind of stuff.
And then you're introduced to tendon pain.
Yeah, and that sucks.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the weighted vest also, is muscle soreness wasn't that bad.
Right.
But the tendon, in your joint kind of pain where it's it's screaming until you get used to it.
Right.
And that's the thing you got to be, to me, was more obvious than anything else, was it's that soreness in your joints.
How did you initially get started with using the vest? What did you do with it first?
I went about it the wrong way. I should have started with 10 pounds and moved up to 20 pounds after a while, but I bought it what I thought was the most affordable and effective weight. I thought 20 pounds would be pretty light to start with, and I should have started lighter. And all I did was kata. I did my first 5-hand kata. I didn't do any of the jumps. And in hand go down, I didn't do the jump. I just slid. But Yondan, the first ki, I slid. I used that to kind of help me out. And I believe that helped me a lot with my posture. Just the form and my posture and keeping upright throughout the movements. I had less torso tilt and waver. Okay. And it cleaned that out. It's I thought of it like an iron to a gi.
Okay.
And how you iron it just kind of presses the weirdness out of the things. And that's how I did with my movement. So, and then from there, once I got comfortable with it, I started doing more fluid movements. So some shifting and blocking and maybe even 5 punch 1 step kind of thing, or a lot of the I call it Steve Ubel warm-ups, where he would do the jab, shift the front foot back down, block, kick, and all that, the timing of that stuff. But that was towards the end when I felt pretty comfortable with the weight, and I didn't feel like it was going to take away from the technique. It was going to force me to stay upright and everything else, and that's where I did that.
Yeah.
So.
I tried it in class a couple of times, and it was pretty difficult to train with it, even with the 4-pound vest. And then I've actually taught with it on. Now, when I was trying it more consistently, was pretty much when we were at the old dojo, and I was running myself ragged just teaching, because I was teaching so many classes and I didn't have a lot of help. Luckily, Jeremiah did help me a little bit, drove all the way down to help me. But that was really, really tough. So I haven't worn it as much. I probably should try it again. Yeah. But I would wear it. So you can wear it over your gi, but if I'm teaching, I wear it under my gi. Yeah. So it's just not a distraction for every little kid to be like, what's that? Should I wear one? Can I wear one? No. Right. Yeah. Oh, what rank should you be when you start wearing one, you think?
I don't think it's... Well... To be honest with you, I believe any kind of resistance training within karate, like the bands, the weight, the wrist, ankles, or the vest, you should be shodan or above. Yeah. Probably. You should generally have fundamental movement down pretty good to where you're in a safe range, and you should be aware of what your body's doing, because those two things are vitally important for you to not overdo it. Right. And typically shodan should be the level you have that. Yeah. So. I would not encourage any children to do it.
Oh no!
No way! Not. No, you definitely, definitely want to be completely fully developed. Yeah. You want to be fully developed, and I wouldn't encourage anybody I wouldn't encourage any adults to try it until they have a solid foundation of movement. I mean, that's really important, because you guys, man, if you haven't experienced back pain or hip pain or any kind of like joint pain, you got to be careful because that is really discouraging, and
it's
it
hard
does.
To get past.
Yeah, it's really hard to get past, and then it lingers.
Yeah.
And if you do too much, it will be reoccurring. And you'll cause damage. You might not injure yourself, like it might not limit you from doing things, but it will limit the volume of what you can do, because it just gets to a certain point, and they're like, nope, not anymore.
Yeah.
And I think all this supplemental training, I always encourage our students to be very cautious, to go slowly, and very basic movements.
Right.
Nothing elaborate, nothing crazy, because once you start to get in these different like subtle shifting and rotating and stuff like that, you could mess yourself up pretty good.
Don't jump straight into doing unsu with the
weight. No. I literally for 2.5 years did the hands, and that's it. I didn't bi-side eye. I did it with the bi-side eye, and I did it with Jion. I never tried it with Empi or Konkudai or anything like that, because I just in my own mind, in my own like self-preservation, I was like, you know what, I don't want to even know if my knees can handle that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't want to find out, so I'll keep it on the safe side.
Right.
Kihon wise, I mean, if you do anything in the syllabus up to Shodan level, you should be able to control it. But I always encourage you, again, go slowly. The reoccurring theme is go slow, stay in control of what you're doing when you have any kind of resistance work. It's just like any bodybuilding work or, any kind of conditioning. You're not out to like get as much weight as possible. You're always focused on proper form, posture, everything, because it's safe. Right. And that's where it becomes really important, is the safety of it. A 1 pound ankle weight doing front kicks fast can blow your knee out.
Yeah, what we're talking about. We're not talking about ankle weights just yet.
No, but you have to understand that's the severity of it. Most people go, oh, it's just a pound, and they start throwing it, and it's like, dude, it's just a pound, but you're doing 20 of them as hard as you can. You know how much force is multiplied in that? And
think about like doing reverse punches with the weighted vest on, and it's like torquing your back,
your lower back
every single time. Yeah, I gotta be really careful.
Yeah, so
there's a lot of hip strength that has to be had there as well.
Yeah. I think the best advice about weighted vests or weighted any kind of resistance training is go slow, don't do a lot of volume, systematically and incrementally move forward. Don't be like, oh, I've done it for 2 months, I should be able to move forward. If you think if the thought goes, I should be able to, don't.
Yeah.
It should be the point where your thought process should be, this doesn't challenge me.
Right. So I think part of the mentality to have with the weighted vest is it's different than like lifting weights necessarily, because the point of lifting weights is to lift weights and in a lot of cases get stronger, or in some cases maybe it's getting more repetitions, and maybe in some cases it's moving more quickly. Personally, I would think about a weighted vest. It's similar to like doing push-ups. Doing push-ups, you want to do more push-ups. Sometimes you can add resistance to push-ups. You can add a plate on your back, or you can add a band, but you don't necessarily do that all the time. Most of the time, you're just going to increase the number of repetitions that you're doing. You can think about a weighted vest like that. You don't have to necessarily increase the weight of the vest. Instead, you could just gradually increase the amount of time you're wearing the vest or what type of movements you're doing. So adding that type of variation and increasing your versatility while using the vest. And then maybe after quite a while, adding in like really gradually, like 2.5 pounds at a time, maybe. And obviously we're speaking in Murica weights. Sorry for our metric people. But you get what we're talking about. Just very gradually increasing and maybe focusing on something different, not focusing on the weight, but focusing on like what can you actually do while wearing the weight that you have.
Right.
And if you can't cover all those bases wearing that weight, you probably shouldn't go up. It's different if you're going to use your weight for, you're going to switch gears and use your weight for doing like jump squats or something. But,
doing karate movement, you definitely want to be cautious.
Yeah. Anything else to add to that?
There are some that are like neoprene material.
Okay.
They're like that stretchy wetsuit material that zips up.
Okay.
They tend to fit better because they form to your body better, and then they have a little elasticity. So when you zipper it up and then drawstring it together, it stays nice and tight. It doesn't work itself loose. The vest style that you kind of just wear like a vest and then have loops and straps, they tend to kind of not even over time, just within the first couple of practices, you'll be able to kind of work them loose, and you don't want that. You want to keep it nice and tight. So lose your ego when you do this kind of work. Just be humble enough to go, you know what? Start small, move up, stay healthy, don't get injured, so you can enjoy the benefits, the long-term benefits of using the vest. Tensile strength in your tendons, stuff like that. That helps out big time.
Right.
So.
And honestly, like I said, what is the goal here? Is the goal to have better karate where you're moving more explosively and more efficiently and whatever, or is it to just like get a good workout? In my opinion, if you want to just get a good workout, there are safer ways to do it if you want to use weights.
Absolutely.
So, just saying.
Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
So, what are you working on?
No, you get to go first.
Oh, I get to go first?
Yeah.
It's going to be very boring and depressing. I'm working on, I guess it would be considered move number 4 in Chinte, where you're shifting from the overhead conquered eye thing from horse stance into fudodachi. Pretty sure I said that last time. Because the move is really freaking hard. Okay, I'm just saying. Just trying to like control your hips and not stick your butt out and try to get your leg over, get your hands timed correctly, all of that stuff. It's ridiculous. I don't know who made up this kata. You need to be punished. It's super messed up. This is very difficult. I don't know why you would even move like that, but I'm just saying. Moving that front leg is hard. Why couldn't we just move the back leg? That would have been better. But no, you have to be sideways, and then you're moving your front leg over into a fudodachi, which is already a stance that sucks. Okay? It's hard enough as it is. Anyway, rant over. That's what I'm working on. In addition to the rest of Chinte, but I'm just stuck on this move.
The struggle's real, right?
For sure.
Yeah, I know
what you're working on.
Chinte also, and the the shifting from fudodachi to zenkutsudachi, being sharper in it, being better timed in it, that kind of thing. Not letting my hands rise up at the end. Like going settling instead of coming up.
Punching.
And keeping the shoulders down and stuff like that. So, but what was really not discouraging, but like for me, it was eye opening. Is like we were talking to our teacher last night, and he was giving us correction on the kata and everything else, and we asked him, is it really this difficult? Is it technically challenging? And
he's like,
no, it's not
really.
And it's like, oh, it's us. He's like, yeah, basically. So
well, he did say that some of the specific moves are difficult, but.
Yeah, they're difficult, but at the same time, I feel like we can get in our own way. We're so focused on the minute, and we try to get that minute move down that I believe our katas are above average.
Sure.
Chinte is above average.
When you continue to work on stuff, you're going to be above average. So.
Yeah, but this is, I guess, a little side note that to follow up on what I was starting with, and that is that Steve's told us over and over again that he's never happy with his own karate. That he's constantly seeing mistakes over and over again. They just become more and more subtle, right? And working with Steve, you'll never get that. Oh yeah, you got it. That's good, 100%. Don't worry about it. You got that. No, you'll never hear that. It's better. You're moving in the right direction. Oh no, you went back. Your old habit showed up again, or you're doing this again, right? And last night was one of those moments where I was like, you know what? As long as we're getting better, we're good. And if you don't expect a pat on the back from Steve, you'll be able to train with him for your life because you understand where he's coming from.
Right.
And it's not like he's much better or more advanced than you. It's his approach. His approach is he's never happy.
He is much better.
Oh, he absolutely is 100% much better. I'm not claiming to be as good or anywhere near that, but what I'm saying is like that's the secret. To me, that's his secret. It's like he's never satisfied.
Right.
He's always working on something.
Yeah.
And I feel like some of these, sometimes people listen to our podcast and they hear us talking about these fundamental movements or these fundamental shifts, and they're like, these guys must have some horrible, like, unathletic ability. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're just horrible karateka and we're just struggling. And we're not good, but we are craftsmen. like in a sense, and we're never really happy with what we got. We always know there's issues.
What's the point of training if you're not going to try to get better?
Yeah,
that's what
exactly.
I literally always say. What's the point if you're not going to try to continue to improve? So, in your face, okay?
Not in your face, just like.
Yeah, in your face.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
No, we're just the world's best. Basically.
I didn't say that. I said if you're not trying to improve, what's the point? That's what I said. I didn't say I was the best. I know I'm not.
Me neither. I suck.
Okay. Well, this was great.
Oh, I'm working. I already talked about what I'm working on too, huh?
You talked about what you're working on, yeah.
Yeah. And then, like, if anybody got suggestions about how to handle a prima donna dog.
Hot dog?
Hot dog. A prima donna dog that just demands our attention all the time, then let us know. We'll preface it by saying she's 12.
She's a 12-year-old pit mix.
Yeah, so any suggestions?
With one eye.
Yes.
And a swollen leg.
And a swollen leg and all kind of missing parts. She's falling apart.
She's falling apart.
She's falling
Poor
apart.
dog. Okay, well, this has been great. Bye, guys.
Bye.